throughout the world, there's a great quest these days for new meanings, for understandings of how the world, how we as humans relate to the cosmos, to the future. And many of the old faiths are dying, at least in their institutionalized forms, have been discredited in various ways, or at least facing various kinds of problems. And yet I think there's still kind of a quest for meaning, for transcendence, for a connection with something larger than oneself. People are looking for it in various ways. I don't think people are necessarily simply going to take things from Asia in the West and vice versa. I think there's going to be a mix of ideas springing up in various parts of the world, coming together in new forms. And I think in a certain sense this is a way for the future. The great German historian, philosopher Karl Jaspers talked about what he called the axial age, by which he meant the axis of human history, about 2,500 years ago, when the great world religions sort of independently came into existence. Monotheism and Judaism, the Greek philosophers, Confucius, the Buddha. So these were parallel developments around the world, and they all were developments in which people in their cultural evolution reached a point where they saw themselves not as simple tribes or small groups, but as under the sway of and under the command of, in some way, principles bigger than themselves, global principles, universal ones. So a universal God for the Jews, Confucius and his sense of universal virtues applicable to everybody. This was a great moment in human history, often submerged in many ways. Well, Jaspers said in writing 1949, right after World War II, that all these movements, in a certain sense, played themselves out. And now there were big, and in a certain sense, the world was like it was before the so-called axial age. It had new technologies and so forth, but had there was an emptiness, no meaning to connect them all together. And he thought this was very dangerous. And in a certain sense, the things that Jaspers foretold, which were there'd be a big conflict between communism and basically social democracy, have played themselves out, and now we're back to square one in a way, and in a sense maybe in a position where there's this fragmentation and so forth, very similar to that of the first axial age, in which people are looking for new sources of meaning. These new sources of meaning, the fertile time for developing them, in fact, are when societies all around the world are becoming fragmented and faced with dissolution, but still have retained enough of their traditions to have something to build on. This was certainly the case in China during the so-called Warring States period, about the middle of the first millennium BC. It's also the case with ancient Israel, beset on all sides by its enemies and ready to fall apart. Out of that came the prophets and so forth. Ancient Greece, a similar thing. The Buddha, India during Buddha's time, somewhat similar. So this time when everything is kind of falling apart, that's the time of fertile cultural creation, which then maybe later on becomes institutionalized. So I think we're in this kind of a time, and so there's this kind of global spiritual quest going on, and all people in different cultures need to learn from each other. And people in the West can certainly learn from China, and vice versa. And in my own career, I've seen myself as attempting to be a kind of a bridge builder, between East and West. And this is just my contribution to this project is one small part of that enterprise.